Journaling has been an inseparable part of my life ever since I was in high school. Back then, I had only one objective in mind, and it was to enhance my writing skills. It wasn't because I wanted to get mental clarity or document my life or strategically plan every era of my life. No, I wasn't even familiar with the concept of journaling as we have it nowadays. The main aim was to upgrade my writing skills and get better at describing events and expressing my thoughts as thoroughly as my articulative skill allowed it. And all of this was because at some point I decided that writing as a career fits me really well and I would like to dedicate the entirety of my life to it. And so I would write a few pages every day, and because I was an amateur writer, I would always find myself struggling to find a topic. So I inevitably turned towards articulating my thoughts and feelings pertaining to the day. I would try to describe the events that took place that day and draw insights out of them, no matter how trivial or surface level they might have been. I would try to articulate those events as vividly as I possibly could and then ask myself what could have been done differently in that situation. This was a habit that I forced into my daily routine with enthusiastic determination of someone who dreamt of becoming a writer. But as time went on and I got better at writing and finding a fitting topic for the day, my writing got diverse and quite changeable. One day I would be writing fleeting thoughts, and another day I would be writing about an academic topic I was curious to delve into. Another day I would be combining goal-oriented writings with concept explorations, and at some point I figured that I can journal in so many ways. There are in fact indefinite types of journaling we can choose from based on the headspace we're in. But the most useful and transformative technique is the one I'm about to describe in this video. See, I thought journaling was all about vomiting my emotional burden onto the page and trapping the thoughts on the blank slate. But as I experimented with a wide range of journaling, I realized that sometimes journaling can be to your detriment if you're not applying the right line of thinking. Having a precise frame while you journal can cement an accurate and useful thinking habit, because the way we write and generate thoughts on the page reinforces our pattern of thinking. If we are always barfing our emotions out on the page in a venting mode, then we are solidifying a harmful pattern of thinking. Chances are, the next time you encounter a horrible event in your life, your internal dialogues are all going to resemble the same negative pattern you've been practicing in your notebook all along. And the analogy I can give you here is like someone who's gossiping all the time. If you gossip one time, then you're more likely to repeat that behavior because now you have created this pattern of thinking in your neurological wirings. And this is going to create a vicious cycle which is going to change your general perception of people, because your external behavior will always lead to internal changes of your thoughts and feelings and vice versa. So the way we must look at the practice of journaling is through creating mental habits that will help us solve problems in real life situations. It's like building a toolkit inside of your head. You create these patterns that can help you shed light on the most complicated scenarios. And we must take into consideration that there are so many different phases to life. So we must curate the journaling style based on the situation that we're in. Sometimes in our lives, we might be facing a brick wall and feel so helpless, frustrated, and confused. In those times when we have zero mental clarity and our thinking ability is almost non-existent. And personally, in those seasons, the only thing that can pull me out of that mental clutter is to grab a notebook and start writing about whatever is happening in my life. I would ask myself, what is the source of all these frustrations and mental stagnations? What are the habits, the daily activities, the responsibilities, the hurdles that is encouraging and feeding into this tragic state of mental imprisonment? And when I try to describe the source carefully, not only it shows me what was causing the mental clutter, but my mind inevitably thinks up some possible solution to remedy the chaos. This is what I am going to be mainly discussing in this video, using journaling as a tool to navigate through the hardship and challenges of everyday living, to see your thoughts clearly and see where you're going wrong in the thinking process. The writer Joan Didion said, "I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I am looking at, what I see, and what it means, what I want, and what I fear." In other words, writing is a great tool for self-awareness. And as the German poet Bertolt Brecht said, "If the lowly do not think about what's low, they will never rise." So knowing where you're at mentally is going to be the first step you take in the journaling process. Because if you don't know what the problem is, then how are you supposed to create a solution for it? And journaling is a place for specifics. You must get to the bottom of the problems and take the situation apart, see what is the core of the problem so that you can attack the core and eliminate the problems completely. Let me give you an example of this in practice. So I had this problem where in the morning I would take a long time to get to work. I would be doing a lot of unnecessary tasks, and by the time I sat down at my desk, it would be 10 a.m. So one time I decided to bring this problem onto the page and try to ask myself, what's taking me so long? I went and measured the time it takes to get the morning activities done, like brushing my teeth, going for a mini stroll in the sun, or making my breakfast, and I ended up calculating and seeing that it only takes half an hour for me to finish the morning routine. And keep in mind that I normally start my mornings at 8, so what's happening to the other hour and a half? Well, guess what? I was finding myself checking my phone so often, staring at the wall for no reason, just wondering how the work is gonna be done, thinking about the work, not actually getting to the work. So seeing that horrible situation, I decided on writing myself a script. And for a few days, I restricted myself to follow that specific course of action that I wrote down. And after a few days, I didn't even need the script anymore. I would go through the activities automatically and see myself get to work at 8:30. So journaling brought this problem onto my awareness, and it made it so specific and measurable that I could clearly see where I was going wrong. And most of our day-to-day perception is entirely vague, so unless we go and make a conscious effort to bring it into the realm of specifics, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. And if anything, we're only going to further complicate the situation just because we're proceeding with that sense of overwhelm that has been generated by ambiguity. And now we need to talk about the time of the day that we dedicate to the practice of journaling. For me, I find it to be much more effective if I go on a journaling spree first thing in the morning. Because if I take control of my thoughts right after I wake up and set specific goals for the day, I'm going to be dragging that mental habit throughout the entirety of the day and proceed with 100% clarity as to what my day should look like. But you could also do this later in the day or at night right before you go to bed. It all depends on what time of the day you're more inclined to plan and think deeply about your life. But I would say, even if you're doing it at night, try to at least write a few words about the highlight of the day in the morning so that you ensure that you know exactly what you're doing and you're not constantly shifting between tasks without getting any real work done. Now that we've talked about when we are gonna journal, let's talk about what we are gonna do when we're journaling. So the first thing that I do when I open my notebook is to date the page, which is such an important step in the journaling process for me because it brings my awareness right onto the moment I am in, and I find it helps me stay consistent with the journaling habit because now if I miss a day, it's pretty obvious that I skipped it, and also because I feel like it's a game and I want to keep up my daily streaks. So much so that if I miss a day, it feels like I didn't actually live that day. And then what we must do is to treat each day as a project. Like you would with a project, you name the day, you decide what the theme of that day is, and you draw the mental map you're about to explore throughout the day. This will habituate your mind into treating each day like a separate adventure. You enter the day with a refreshed sense of appreciation for the upcoming novelty that is going to be brought about as a consequence of your action, and the new lessons you're about to gain at the end of each day. And when it comes to creating projects, I want to mention that I do this in multiple layers of time, like in the beginning of each week, month, and year. So at any moment in time, I always have 4 simultaneous projects in motion. Yearly project, where I sit down in the beginning of each year and decide what the year's highlight is going to be, and the monthly project, which can contain reviews of the last month's project and creating a new path for the month ahead, and the weekly project, which consists of the week's highlight, and at the core of it all is the daily project, which is conducting the processes of all the broader projects that are set in motion. To put it into an analogy, the daily projects are like particles, and the weeklies are like atoms, and the monthlies are like molecules, and the yearlies are like cells, and the sum of it all, your lifelong project, is like an entire organism that you're feeding day in and day out. And I have this rule that every day's project should be unique. It should challenge me in a different way. It should offer a new set of rules. It should have a conclusive end. I always set out to do at least one new thing every day. It doesn't have to be such a big task. It can be as simple as doing a new workout movement, just one new movement that sounds fun to me, or it can be exploring a new genre of reading. It can be changing my writing styles. It can be anything that you're interacting with every single day. You just have to tweak it a little bit so that it's not always the same and your brain doesn't get used to it. Because the moment your brain gets used to the activity is the moment that your brain is going to stop generating new ideas around it. And that's how you improve neuroplasticity, by making tweaks in your daily routine and erasing every expectation of the day. You must try to write a new beginning so that you don't have a jaded way of looking at the world, like when you feel like you're just going through the motion, as if you're living the same day every day. Because your expectation is unconsciously based on what you've experienced the past couple of days. So you need to consciously introduce a radical mindset shift quite manually by writing it out precisely on the page. Your mindset doesn't change unless you practice thinking in a different way for about an hour every day. You must dedicate an hour in the beginning of each day or at night to write out some new ideas you'd like to explore, a new milestone you'd like to hit that day, a new skill you'd like to introduce into your life, a new thinking tool you'd like to use. Change doesn't happen on its own. You must forcefully imprint it on your mind every day. If you want to think in a new way, you must write in a new manner. And most of writing intentionally is sitting there in silence without writing anything. Writing is not about filling the page. No, it's the change that happens in your thinking that is the outcome. You might think journaling is just like ranting out on a piece of paper, but what good would that do if you're always talking rubbish? If you're repeating the same ideas you've been writing about for years, you're just trapped in this self-consumption loop that keeps on filling your mind with the same old ideas, and that's how you get old. That's why I don't like the idea of stream of consciousness writing, because there's a great chance you'll be stagnating in your thinking. Thinking in a novel way every day doesn't mean that you fill up 3 to 5 pages of random old ranting thoughts. No, noble thinking is slow and requires patience. It requires you sitting down with a blank page for half an hour, if that's what it takes to stimulate your brain to think of something worthy and unprecedented. That's how you harbor creativity in your pattern of thinking. It's hard and it's going to take a long time until you get to the point that you can stop your pen from moving on the page, until new ideas and epiphanies just flood into your mind without your conscious effort. See, you dispense with all the trite and ranty streams of thinking. You instead pay attention to useful and brilliant ideas. That's how you train your mind to distinguish between useful and useless ideas. You might come up with a bad idea in your head, and that's fine. But if you stay on that line and don't employ the conscious effort to bring about good ideas, then your mind is going to automatically resort to those useless ideas that you effortlessly come up with. To me, stream of consciousness journaling, if done in the most literal sense, can cement a passive and repetitive thinking habit and amplify negative emotions and make you prone to venting all the time. It can train your mind to be angry at the world and react with the most destructive emotions. If one is not consciously changing the reaction to life events, the default mode would be to take things personally rather than looking at things from a third person's perspective, and simply think of every life event as an experiment and a learning opportunity, a project through which you'll learn about human nature, about the nature of the world, the economy, the mind, the cause and effect rules in the world, and your personal philosophy by which you live every day. In this way, you never lose a battle because you always gain a skill out of it. In other words, you train your mind to focus on building a strong character rather than accumulating material gains and worldly status. So the core idea behind journaling is to transform every day into a project and to go about your day in the most intentional manner and to bring a sense of curiosity into every hour of each day. And the way you can implement that approach is by answering the following questions in your journal every day. First of all, what is going to be the name of today's project? The second question is, what is the most important course of action you need to take today. Put differently, you could say, what is the core of today's project? What is that one main question that should be answered by the end of the project, which would be the end of the day? What's the highlight of my day? It all can fit into this one question of the main course of action. And you can look at it in different ways, but you have to specify it and put it into actionable steps. The third question is, what is that new activity I plan on doing today? Again, this can be as small as just adding a new movement to your workout, and it doesn't have to be related to your work. And the fourth question is one of the most important questions that you need to ask yourself every single day, and it's this: what's a novel and useful mindset to implement and exercise throughout the day, and what is the precise phrase that I can use to remind myself of that mindset and reinforce it every few hours? And if you want to ask yourself further questions, there are two other questions that I often ask myself, and I find these questions to be a very essential part of my writing because it inspires me and it gives me an exciting sense of curiosity. And it goes like this: what's one useful and exciting idea I can explore today? And this question has been inspired by a quote that I came across a long time ago, and it's by Oscar Wilde, and it goes like this: live the wonderful life that is in you. Let nothing be lost upon you. Be always searching for new sensations. Be afraid of nothing. It reminded me of the fact that the world is full of wonderful and novel ideas that we just don't see just because we're not looking for them. And another question that some days I ask myself is this: what is one horrible thing that I am repeating on a daily basis that is eroding my character and sense of self? What is that one behavior that I need to eradicate from my life completely? So this question has been inspired by something that Jordan Peterson said at some point, and I thought that it was a very useful question. And sometimes when I ask myself this question, the answer is pretty obvious. And in that specific day, I become much more aware of the behavior, and just by virtue of being aware of it, I see it slowly perishing and disappearing altogether. Asking these specific action-based questions every day will make living intentional and much more meaningful and purpose-driven. But of course, there are so many other types of journaling that I occasionally indulge in, but they come as a side journaling technique, not the main journaling technique that I use to transform my days. But I also believe that they're pretty useful for fostering a creative mentality. I do doodling sometimes, I do creative writing, wording, writing words with similar beginning, I do handwriting practices, I do sketching sometimes, I do so many things. And they're pretty wonderful because they help me to channel that creative energy out of my mind and to have an outlet. I also view writing the script of this video as another form of journaling, and sometimes I do memo recording just because I am too excited and energetic to put pen to the paper. So I simply just talk it out. And since I mentioned stream of consciousness journaling in the beginning of my video, which is something that I am not against, but it can be taken to an extreme level, which is you treating it as the main technique. And that's dangerous because the main technique should be something that you consciously and effortfully do and try to bring about, not something that already exists in your mind. So I am not talking about stream of consciousness as in emotionally reactive writing. I simply describe my thoughts and feelings around the events that are happening in my life, which I believe to be a great tool to become transparent to yourself, because we assume that we know what we're thinking, but most of the time we come to meet ourselves in the journaling process like a complete stranger that we don't know anything about. And it's also a great way to create an internal space where you can converse with yourself and generate new ideas and expand on it. So these are my journaling techniques. I hope that it was helpful. If you enjoyed watching this video, it would be really nice to leave a comment for me and let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice week.